There has to be that human inference to just confirm, and humans should be the one to set that expectations also for data integrity.
One of the warning letters that the FDA, US FDA, has released last month for one of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, they have cited them and for 83 observation because they totally relied on AI tool without any interference from the human or assessing to set some of the product specifications. So basically, Shabo, regulators have started drafting regulations to control this trend in the industry. However, they have also started investigating this when they do the inspections, and they have also started citing companies for this.
Welcome to the Chain Reaction by Pharmatica.io, the podcast that explores the pharmaceutical life cycle through real world insights and practical strategies. I'm your host, Shubhangi Dua, podcast producer and B2B journalist. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, data isn't just information, it's the foundation of product quality, patient safety, and regulatory trust. But as AI and digital systems reshape the industry, how do we ensure that data remains accurate, traceable, and compliant? Today, we are joined by Nour AlSaleh, founder and CEO at Veragence Pharma Consultancy. And this episode, we will explore data integrity in the age of smart manufacturing. Welcome, Noor. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shabo. Thank you for the introduction. I'm great. Thank you.
Before we dive into the actual questions and set the agenda for this episode, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you started in the pharmaceutical industry.
I'm a pharmacist. I started my journey in the pharmaceutical industry back in 2006. I joined as a in the quality assurance department. This is my first role. I worked in an international company here in Jordan. My whole experience is about 20 years in international and national and multinational pharmaceutical companies, all based in Jordan. After this journey, I have took the decision around 3 months ago, or let's say 4 months ago now, to kick off my own pharmaceutical consultancy. I wanted to utilize the knowledge that I have gained throughout this journey in pharmaceutical companies, industry, manufacturing, and my knowledge in the regulatory requirements and expectations to serve this in supporting my pharmaceutical companies in the Middle East region specifically, and also all over the world in enhancing their compliance with the regulatory requirements and ensuring the patient safety in their medications throughout their manufacturing process.
Let's set the agenda for this podcast. And
Yeah.
is there one thing you'd like the audience to know so they stay tuned in?
The most important thing that the audience need to know about the industry is patient safety. Whatever regulations and whatever controls the authorities are imposing on pharma manufacturers, the main target is to ensure that the patient is receiving the safest medicine that is fit for the disease, let's say, or for its purpose in general.
Okay. In regulated environments, for instance, let's take data integrity. It's become a non negotiable now. So, for those who are working in such environments, how do you define data integrity today?
Today, data integrity simply is the assurance that all data point, generating point in the GXP or the GMP environment, let's say from a sensor that is reading a signal to batch records to AI model outputs as well. The data that is generated from these tools is complete, accurate, attributable, and trustworthy enough to enable the decision maker to make a decision that is producing a safe medicine to the patient taking this product. Lately, in the introduction of AI models and the technologies that are being incorporated into the industry, the scope of data integrity have slightly, or let's say more significantly widened to take into consideration that now we are not talking about just chromatography and the paper-based documentation. Now we're talking about tools that are generating information and data based on whatever information that you are logging or training them on to generate the information. So when we are talking about data integrity and the principles, we need to ensure that this AI model or tool is actually being fed with the correct data And actually, after it's generating a decision or results, let's say, it is being evaluated correctly by a human to ensure that the data is correctly interpreted and the correct decision is being taken. So data integrity now should be evaluated in different ways to ensure that the all principles of data integrity are correctly established, and whatever data that is produced by these tools are actually the correct one and properly evaluated and let's say discussed and assessed by a human being.
When we have to talk about the compliance side of data integrity, how should pharma leaders tackle that today?
Actually, this is the basic role or the most important area that pharma leaders should focus about this topic. Specifically, when we are incorporating AI models in the manufacturing process and generating information for decision makers, it's very important that the pharma leaders first be knowledgeable about the AI models. They are able to read information generated from the AI models. They translate this data or information into the correct decision that guarantees the success of the industry and the correct decision making. Another critical role for leaders is to create the environment and the required resources who are knowledgeable enough also to manage the activities in light of the AI environment. We need to have quality leaders who have the talent or enough talent to merge both. They need to be acquainted with the GXP regulatory knowledge, and as well they need to have the talent to be able to use and interpret data generated from AI tools. Because if you have this gap, we have these or leaders who are knowledgeable about the regulatory and pharmaceutical regulations, and we have also data scientists, and we have employees who are knowledgeable about AI tools. But the shortage that we are facing now is that we need to have the employees who have both talents altogether. So we have the capable leaders to control the process to ensure that we have the correct decision makers who are familiar with the criticality of the regulations and be able to move the operations in the company or the industry in the correct way to satisfy all the regulatory expectations.
And I suppose this is where Alcoa comes in. So does Alcoa still fully apply in digital and AI driven systems? Or I think they call it Alcoa Plus.
Yeah, it started with Alcoa, and we have the Alcoa Plus, and lately also we have the Alcoa Plus Plus established, and to cover all the requirements of the data integrity standards or principles into the industry.
Tell me a bit about Alcoa Plus Plus and how is that applying in digital and AI driven systems in pharma?
When we talk about Alcoa Plus, as I mentioned previously, we immediately think about logbooks and chromatograms generated from chemical analysis, let's say. However, now when we have the AI tools, we need to ensure that the principles of Alcoa strictly and practically being detected or applied in the AI models that we are using. For example, when we say attributable, which is the first letter in Alcoa, we need to know if whatever a model, let's say we are using an AI model and it flags a deviation, for example. When we talk about attributable, it means that we need to know who is behind this action or this specific activity. So when we are using an AI tool and it flags a deviation, in this case, we need to specify who is the attributor in this case. Is it the user or the data scientist or the vendor who created some information in this tool? So we need to differentiate that Alcoa principles previously they have a clear standards like and clear interpretations. However, in light of the AI industry now and AI tools modernize it, we need to make sure that we identify the exact elements of the Alcoa and how we assure that each and every element is properly incorporated into our AI models that we are using. And each and every element of the Alcoa is actually clear and its principles is properly defined in the industry. So each, let's say, pharmaceutical manufacturer can identify the expectations and be able to apply and to comply with the standards of the Alcoa Plus principles.
How are the expectations?
I want to talk about the expectation of the regulators. Because of this ambiguity and the introduction of this AI tools in the late period, the regulators themselves, specifically the EU regulators, they have already started drafting some annexes, let's say, which are part of the regulations. We call them annexes, to talk about the regulatory expectations and what do they expect from the manufacturers to control the process. What are the do's and don'ts? What are the areas that they need to more to give more focus on, and what are the areas that are very critical and they do not prefer that we apply AI tools in the areas. And they also they signaled and they gave a huge focus on the idea that whatever AI tool you are using, you cannot at all rely on the results purely from this AI tool. Human interference is still required. You need to verify the information generated from this, yeah, from this AI tool, because as you know, it is a tool after all. After all, it's like a machine generating information. You never can rely on a machine generated without human interference, without human logic, evaluating the data, analyzing the data, and then ensuring that we are, as a human, generating the correct decision based on the information that we got from this AI tool.
I completely agree with you there. Human in the loop is a must in any industry, especially pharma, which holds so much sensitive data, especially when it comes to patients. You have to be careful. So human interference is a definite. That just reminded me of an example. I went to a AI health tech conference last week in London, and somebody, I think a company, I won't name them, but a company is working on a pathology system, AI pathology system that would spot cancer cells in humans. And they were telling us that during one of their tests, actually, they ended up spotting, I'm not sure, I think it was a cancer cell that a human could not have identified at all. Like they did not see it, but the AI system spotted it. So there are like pros to it for sure, but I completely agree with you. Like there has to be that human inference to just sort of confirm, and humans should be the one to set that expectations also for data integrity.
Yeah, totally agree with you. This is the main concept that regulators are each and every day focusing on. And actually, Shabo, one of the warning letters that the FDA, US FDA, has released last month for one of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, they have cited them and for 83 observation because they totally relied on AI tool without any interference from the human or assessing to set some of the product specifications. So basically, Shabo, regulators have started drafting regulations to control this trend in the industry. However, they have also started investigating this when they do the inspections, and they have also started citing companies for this. So we cannot have this justification that we still don't have clear guidelines from the regulators. We are still waiting for the guidelines to be effective or to be finalized. Patient safety is not negotiable. So if you have an AI tool that is in place, you need to be proactive. You need to set the basis. You need to ensure with all the resources that you have that whatever information the AI tool is generating, you need to know what is behind this information. How did it get into your systems? Who approved this? Who evaluated the rationale behind this information? AI can speed up the process of analyzing data, highlighting some trends, for example, in specific areas. But it should never replace human logic or human evaluation. It's like a co-worker. You can consider it as a co-worker with human in the industry, but at all, it will never be a replacement of human brain, let's say.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. So, in your experience, where do most data integrity breaches or risks happen in modern manufacturing systems like MES or ERP integrations?
Actually, the weakest point in when we have systems automation doing the automation for our processes, usually it's not the system itself that triggers the data integrity violation. It's actually the interfaces between those systems. When data is transferred from one system to another, this is where the we have some hidden risk because we don't have an audit trail to track what happened here. Because if the systems were not built that are compatible to each other or use the same definition, for example, data will be transferred from one system to another, maybe to the wrong destination, to the wrong place, it will be misinterpreted. So this phase is one of the weakest points. Also, when humans they sometimes use like transcription methods or Excel sheets to transfer data between interfaces. Also, this is one of the weak points that usually gaps in data integrity can be caught in the industry. So basically, if you have something that is not continuous, you have something in between integrated systems or validated systems, you can have this gap. Also, when we have when we are outsourcing some of the, let's say, cloud data storage for our cloud or SaaS providers, sometimes those providers they can do some changes, they do updates for the softwares. If we as manufacturers do not control these changes, are not aware about, changes will be automatically installed into our systems without actually doing the proper validation or testing, let's say, for the system after doing these changes. So we will end up with having trouble using a system that is not controlled. We are not aware about the details that changed, how it affects actually our processes, and eventually how it affects the accuracy of our data that is generated using those systems. So basically, it's about our internal processes, also about our outsourced activities. We need to control all this information, all these processes, so we can say that we are actually controlling the data integrity through our automated systems and tools that we're using.
It sounds like one tiny error by a SaaS engineer, let's say in a company, in a pharma company, could essentially have an impact on the entire supply chain. Sounds like that.
It's exactly the same because regulators they emphasize one very important point. They say that you can outsource activities, but you cannot outsource responsibility. So you need to have this oversight on your vendors, your service providers, because ultimately you are responsible for whatever service they are providing to you. You need to have, let's say, the contracts that governs the relationship between the manufacturer and those service providers, because you need to ensure that the data throughout its life cycle, and we are not talking about a specific phase, we are talking now about the life cycle of data from the instant it's generated until the instant it's archived and retired. And sometimes when you're dealing with the vendor, for example, they have your data. So eventually they have the oversight on it. If you are not controlling the oversight, if you are not setting in the contract that clear clauses that you have the right to audit them, you have the right to retrieve the data whenever you need this data for example, for an investigation, for an inspection. And also, you need to take into consideration that once you have exit, for example, this agreement, what will happen to your data? How do you will guarantee that it will be maintained in its accurate and controlled state towards the end of the archival or let's say the retention period of the information or data that you need to control as per the regulatory guidelines? So, in terms of this automation and digitalization and the use of external parties, the oversight should be more stronger than the current period that we are in. We need to have strong teams overseeing the activities, setting the rules, and following up with the service providers on the proper implementation.
Yes, I think it sounds like a very systemized, like have a very systematic protocols within your company for sure. So, moving on to the next question, how does computer system validation, so CSV, how does that need to change when dealing with AI or automation systems that learn continuously in real time?
Actually, the traditional way for doing computerized system validation is you have this protocol. Let's say you have this knowledge about the software. However, and you know what the inputs, you know the outputs, and you validate it at once, and then you can do the validation review. Let's say every 2 to 3 years. So this standard or this way of doing computer validation is no more suitable when you are dealing with AI models. And let's think why. Because AI is a dynamic tool. It's not like I have this machine, I validated it and I control it, so it will be doing the same function each and every day. When you are dealing with AI, you are talking about a life cycle because once you validate this, let's say AI tool, you train them, they understand the concept. However, there is a lot of dynamic issues happening in this tool. They keep learning, you keep training those tools about new methods of doing analysis, let's say. So it's a dynamic state. It's not like I have validated the software. It will be the same all over the period. We have a risk when we deal with AI tools, risk of accuracy, because we have this risk of it drifting in the way the model is operating. So when we're talking about computerized system validation in light of the AI environment, we need to ensure that it's not static, it's dynamic. We need to monitor the system. We need to check the trends if there is any possibility of drifting. So we need to continuously monitor, evaluating, revalidating, reassessment of the tool that is still working within the standards that are expected from the processes that we are doing. And we need to have the controls and frequent monitoring, as I mentioned previously, with the agents who are providing us with those tools to make sure that we are aware of each and every change, of any risks, let's say, that may arise from the use of these tools. So continuous monitoring, continuous evaluation until from the moment the data is generated until the moment the data is retired is the responsibility of the manufacturer to make sure that is still the data is accurate and it's properly generated and properly archived as well.
You talked about drift, so configuration drifting, for instance, security systems. So here I feel like within the pharmaceutical AI sphere, wipe coding is not going to fly. When it comes to compliance systems, wipe coding is, I don't think it's going to work for a very long time because especially like I feel like a real-time AI is going to pose a big, big challenge within pharmaceutical industry because of the regulations and compliance and because of how accurate you need to be. Is there a solution for that, or any thoughts on that?
Actually, it's very simple. If you have the right people overseeing this activity, if they have the correct knowledge for the regulations, alongside their knowledge with the digitalization process and the gaps and the weak points, also if they have properly trained, if they get the proper training by the agents, let's say, or service providers, they can know actually when there's a red flag to be raised. If there's a drift in the data, it will actually, when you analyze data, you can if you are using a human mind, you can catch up specific errors and illogical data manipulation. So, knowledge, training, and people awareness is the key here because, after all, culture and people are the base for data integrity control. You need to make sure that every level in your organization, starting from operators, they are not just operating machines. They need to understand what is AI tools, how are they using them, what is the expected result from this. You need also to include the team who are responsible for validation at the start of the project. You don't have to complete everything and then you call up validation guys, yeah, come on and start validating this tool or this software. They need to be incorporated from the first phase of the project, so all the team are aware of what's going on, what are the expectations from them, what are the requirements for the validation team, for example, for this software to ensure that it's complying with the pharmaceutical regulations. So it's about a cycle. It's all about the life cycle of the process, from the procurement, from the implementation, the execution, the trend monitoring until the completion of a project or, let's say, retirement of a certain data related to a project.
I understand that if you're going to use AI, use it from the get-go and make sure it you have the best team possible and make sure that they're following those right protocols and regulations and updating it as you go constantly.
Yeah, the key here, Shabo, is to focus also one more point that we need to focus on. We need to ensure that the requirements for data integrity are incorporated from the design phase. Some people or some companies, what they do is they get the software, they prepare the URS, the basic requirements, as if it is a usual, let's say, tool. And after they get this software, they start brainstorming after what are the data integrity requirements that I need to implement here. This is not the right way to do the things. You need to incorporate your requirements for data integrity at the beginning of the design phase for the system or for the software. You need to highlight to map your process. You need to know where are the critical data generated in which parts of the system or which sub phases of this process. You need to map this, identify the critical areas, the risks, and then put on your requirements in the design phase, and we call it the user requirement specification. So the vendor who is providing you with this tool is aware of your requirements, will make sure that he will not deliver a software or tool unless it satisfies this requirement. You can also deal from the beginning, you can select a vendor who is already integrating data integrity controls within their softwares or platforms. It will be easier and it will be more comfortable when you have someone who understands your requirements, understand the regulatory expectations. So they build their softwares from scratch to comply with this requirement. And whatever you add, it will be a pure technical, let's say, details to cover your specific processes. But you will not be building a new total software from scratch because the vendor did not take this into consideration when they initially developed the software from scratch.
Absolutely. You have to have a strong foundation, and to have that, you need to partner with the right people, the right vendors who are already aware of what you want, who understand what you want essentially from the get-go.
Totally agree. Yes.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges in keeping audit trails and traceability in highly automated or integrated environments?
We have two challenges actually. The first one is that when we have a huge number of systems that we are working on to generate data and to manage our processes. Each and every system it generates a huge number of event details or audit trails. The challenge here is the usual process of reviewing audit trails, which is the usual historical, the way we are doing it nowadays. In light of this huge number of audit trails, will not be at all feasible or efficient because people will spend hours and hours and hours reviewing data in the old methodology. They will not be able to detect the critical anomalies in this phase. So this is one of the risks that we have. Another one is that when you have more than one system integrated, you need to, the issue of controlling or reviewing the audit trail is to ensure that the process in all of its phases from the end until from the generation to the end is controlled and all the data that has happened during the process and messages, they are captured. So the issue here is that each system is generating its own data and it's kept, let's say, on a separate platform. So we need to have somewhere that we collect all the data. It's all, let's say, uploaded into a specific platform, collected all together. So we'll have one source of data for evaluation our processes. So the challenge here is that we need to start, or the companies, they need to start looking for the AI tools that enhances the review process. It's able to detect the anomalies by a specific learning tool, and then to highlight those anomalies for the user or the human being who is assessing these audit trails, let's say, and to take the action depending on the critical messages that were captured by this AI tool. So we need the AI tool to support people in an efficient way to highlight critical points, critical messages, and then human can act based on this summary to take the correct decision and correct action based on this highlighted problems or trends, let's say.
I suppose this is why data mapping is so essential, to make sure when those anomalies hit, you know where to tackle them and where to sort of fix it right away, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. We need to learn, we need to teach them how to detect those anomalies and to ensure that they will detect each and every anomaly based on our criteria and share this with us. And then we as a human can take the proper action.
What should pharma teams really consider when qualifying vendors? Because we talked about how partnering with the right vendors is so important. So when it comes to digital transformation and AI tools in today's world, what is the one most important thing that pharma teams should consider when partnering with those qualifying vendors?
When you are selecting a vendor, one of the main or the first step is to ensure that does this vendor comply or satisfy the quality requirements that I want them to have? Do they have the correct quality management systems or maturity levels? Do they have the correct certifications that allow them to produce certain softwares or tools that comply with the pharmaceutical standards? Can they share this evidence? Sometimes there are vendors, they say, yeah, we have this, but when you ask them for evidences, they cannot share this evidence. So it's very important to ensure the transparency by the vendor at the initial stage in the development or procurement, let's say, and also on the ongoing operation of the software by the vendor. As I mentioned before, there's a high risk that if the vendor is doing changes and updating the features and applying them without informing the customer will be in big trouble. It will affect their validation status for the software, the accuracy of the data that is used to produce our medicines, and which is eventually will result in patient safety. We need to do the due diligence. We need to check the background of this software provider or vendor, let's say, make sure that they are accredited by the correct agencies, monitor their behavior in terms of notification, customer notification, and in terms of support, in terms of reliability. Specifically, when an agreement is over, will they be cooperative to share or to transfer the ownership of the data from their side to the customer side after it's retired, and I might be requiring this data for a future investigation, for a historical review of a certain product. So all this should be evaluated in the initial phase. Contracts should be in place to govern this relationship, and to check the history of the vendor. Reference companies, for example, who have dealt with this service provider, we can ask them about the behavior of this software and the reliability of the vendor, also in terms of compliance and updating their softwares to comply with the regulatory or the latest trends, let's say, in the regulatory requirements.
For companies transitioning to Pharma 4.0, let's say, what are the essential requirements for staying inspection ready?
For inspection ready. Yeah. This is the key point for all pharma industry manufacturers, and this is the headache. It's not a headache, it's like the, let's say, the purpose point. Not a headache because inspections are for our benefit. Actually, to be inspection ready, you need to have your system robust enough. You need to have a system that you can use to retrieve your data from the automated softwares as quickly as possible. Because during inspections, you don't have this luxury of long days to wait until I get the information from the multi systems that I have. You need to have, like, let's say, tools or a review, periodic review exercises on how to be ready for an inspection by the correct using the correct methodologies to retrieve information, to review this information frequently to ensure that you are actually getting the correct data and not something wrong that you will be sharing with an inspector. You need your people to always be or understand the tools they are using, because if the people if you, whenever you have this perfect system, this perfect automation, and this perfect documentation system, if your people are not using it in the correct way, you will end up with wrong information. And specifically if they are not feeling comfortable doing things in the right way all the time, because sometimes people are under pressure to hit some numbers to get the target, to mask any incident that happens during the process. So it's key that when we talk about inspection readiness, we need to have this environment that is all the time doing the right thing whenever there's an inspection or there's no inspection. And this is actually the main task of the management team on the side. They need to establish an environment and culture where people are free to report deviations, to say that this tool or this AI model that is proposed by a management team, let's say, is not doing the right thing, is wrong. They need to have this freedom of reporting. They need to take the correct time to do the things. They need to have the knowledge, enough knowledge and expertise and talents for the tasks that they are doing. If you ensure that you are controlling your vendors, you have the correct people, you are preparing the correct environment and culture to ensure the data integrity, then you will be for sure inspection ready at all times. It's not about specific period to prepare for inspection. You will be ready all the time. It's all about some logistic issues that you need to focus on. But the inspection readiness is a continuous process. It's not a 1 or 2 day preparation. It's a culture issue. It's a way of doing business, and the way of ensuring that I'm in compliance all the time, because my bottom target is not only inspection readiness. It's about ensuring that we are producing the correct medicine and it's safe for the patient. This is the message that should be enforced by the management through all the company and at all levels, actually.
It's so key to have that trust factor and to know that the work you're doing, you to continuously make sure that you are inspection ready is just so important. Should just be a part of your routine now, and not, something that's the deadline, so you need to meet it, because it directly impacts humans and their bodies ultimately. So I completely agree with you there. And now we're nearly at the end of the podcast. So looking forward, what does a fully compliant AI enabled manufacturing environment realistically look like?
We are looking for in the future, maybe 5 to 10 years from now, we need to have, if we are looking for an established AI environment, we need to have the control systems in the company that will provide the controls over the vendors, as I mentioned, to ensure that you will stay in the validated state with no expectation, surprises, let's say, or no problems arising from improper control. We need also to have the correct talent that merges between the GXP knowledge and AI models. Those are scarce these days, but this is actually the challenge for the readers. They need to work on that, because ultimately, if you are going toward digitalization and the AI environment, you need to have this expertise on site. And it's not about employees also; it's also about leadership. They need to understand this. They need to know what are they need to be able to read an AI card, for example, and they understand what is the impact in terms of regulatory compliance. Management awareness will be key in supporting or destroying an industry, actually, because it's all about management and how they perceive the messages down that spot. Also, when we are talking about the future, we are expecting more interference between service providers and the companies to understand the requirements and to ensure that they are building actually the data integrity requirements into the software that they are working on or developing, in order to facilitate the issue and the exercise for the manufacturers. So it's a win-win situation. They will be preparing the software that is in compliance, then the manufacturers will be more comfortable that they are using actually a tool that was properly developed, and will satisfy the requirements without huge customization, without a further investment in development and optimization. We need also to emphasize, and it should be very clear if you are talking to an AI controlled environment in the future, that AI is a co-worker with a human. It's a partnership. We cannot expect a complying pharmaceutical industry in the future if we do not emphasize this message. If leaders do not emphasize that human is doing the analysis, is taking the results from the AI tools, but evaluating it, assessing it, and challenging the results, these, to ensure that AI is actually doing the correct thing, and no errors are happening because of a misinterpretation, because of gaps in the systems, or because of a vendor doing some updates without informing the user at the end. So culture and people are the key points here, because if we do all this and people and culture are not moving on with the same page, whatever modernization, whatever digitalization we are doing, we will definitely not succeed in producing the medicine within the regulatory expectations. Frustration will arise, and this expectation from the let's say digitalization, will not deliver the message or the results that are expecting. Culture and people are the key points, and after that it comes the service providers and the optimization of the processes. And it's all about management and how they enforce this message in on spot, in the ground, and not only through verbal messages. We need actions on the floor, so we see successful implementation of AI and digitalization in the pharmaceutical industry. And also we expect in the future that we will have more regulatory interference with the manufacturers. We expect that they will be talking more to manufacturers to understand what they are doing, what control they are expecting from them. So in the 5 to 10 years, we expect more guidelines to show on the ground from different authorities to focus on the expectations, the controls. and to facilitate the life of manufacturers on let's say harmonization and proper alignment on the expectation and the compliance requirements for these from the regulators on the pharmaceutical industry.
As you're a leader yourself, if you had to advise pharma leaders on what they should focus on in the next 3 to 10 years, what would you tell them to prioritize?
The priority is always about decision makers in a company. So, decision makers, they come from expertise and knowledge and the culture. So, for the first step that we need to focus on is to build our talent team. Those team will be capable to select the correct tool and to know how to use it actually, and to take the correct decisions. And also this talent, those talented group of quality leaders, let's say, and to I want to emphasize it's not only about quality leaders, it's about also manufacturing and operation leaders, because compliance is the responsibility of all the teams on the ground. It's not about quality only. So operations should have the talents, quality should have also the talents, and leadership should have the talents. Leadership should invest in training people and getting the right resources in the right place. They need to have the rules established in the company and cascade them down until the lowest level in the work organization. So leaders should invest more time in supporting their teams, their decisions, in clarifying the risks, taking the proper actions whenever a risk arises and is highlighting by their teams. The most important message that the leaders should do and prepare the companies for is the interference of human in taking the in assessing the results of the AI, because we expect that because of the fast movement in the industry, people will take this quick shortcut. They will not invest the proper time to assess the data that is generated from the AI tools. So this is one of the key and risky areas that leaders should focus on and train their people on, to take the time to and invest in it, in assessing the tools, selecting the right tool depending on the process, and to verify the information and to act as a co-worker with this AI tool to generate the outcome and the correct decisions from the process. And also they need to they encourage their teams, specifically in the development maybe and regulatory teams, to talk more to regulators, because if you talk more in the initial stage, you can understand the expectations, you will get what is required and implemented in your development projects. And by this you can enter the market with new products in the fast way, which will bring the relief to management, and also you will get the correct product into the market, but you will have the credit that you will be doing it in the right way, but in the shortest expected period.
Okay, I think that was a great point to wrap up with, Noor. Thank you so much for such a clear and insightful discussion on data integrity, GXP, and AI in today's pharma world. So it's been a pleasure having you on. To our Pharmatica community, thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode valuable, please follow, rate, and share. Join the conversation on X and LinkedIn at TM360 Tech and at pharmatica.io. Also, visit our website for more expert insights, pharmatica.io. Thank you so much, everyone.